Hi, um, my name is Allison, and I am 24 years old. And this year I was diagnosed with severe chronic idiopathic neutropenia. And I am frustrated with the lack of knowledge that there is around this disorder. And basically, I'm frustrated by how I've kind of been just cast off because no one can help me. No doctor can help me, and the research is so minimal that even when I contact other networks that have neutropenic networks, they don't really have a lot of information for me other than come to our conference, and which I'm planning on doing next year, but this year I could not afford it. So a little backstory, like I said, I'm 24, I am a mother, I have a 1.5-year-old son, and really what led to my finally getting a diagnosis for this disorder that I have had my entire life was the birth of my son. I started out having symptoms of neutropenia when I was 4 years old. I had chronic mouth ulcers. And at the time, no one really could figure out the reason behind it, and it was kind of cast aside as being really, I have no idea. They didn't do anything about it. I saw a doctor for it and they told me it was hormones, but I was, 8. So I don't know. I started getting chronic infections when I was about 6 and 7. UTIs were the beginning, and then I ended up with ear infections, eye infections, respiratory infections, sinus infections, pneumonia, bronchitis, any type of infection I had. I missed a lot of school. I didn't have a lot of social life. I was bullied a lot when I did go to school because I missed so much school. And people would tell me I was a faker and a hypochondriac. Of course, they didn't really know what that word meant when they were kids, but basically that's what they were saying. I had teachers questioning my illness. I had parents of other students accusing me as a child of being a hypochondriac. And it was really rough. So eventually my parents pulled me out of school and homeschooled me because it was impossible for me to keep up with how many times I got sick. So eventually, when I was about my last year of high school, I guess, I was a senior, or I was going to be a senior, I begged my parents because I really wanted to graduate from a public high school. So I begged my parents to let me go back to school, and I got my credits transferred, and I was able to graduate with, I was able to graduate. However, the day before graduation, I ended up going to the hospital for a really bad case of tonsillitis. Tonsillitis started when I was about 16, really bad, and then when I graduated, or was supposed to graduate from high school, supposed to walk, they actually exploded, literally. And I was in the hospital, and I was severely dehydrated. I had lost about 20 pounds because I could not eat for a very long time. So I was unable to walk. I do have a diploma, but I wasn't able to walk with my class. So that was disappointing. After that, I started college, and I really wanted to be a doctor. So I started going for biology, and I love science and biology, and it just fascinates me. Genetics are literally the most fascinating thing I've ever read. But because of my disorder, I probably will never be able to be a doctor. So that's fun. But let me continue on with my story. College was a little easier because I could miss class and still be able to submit things online. And I really had understanding professors, and they they really made allowances for me, even though back then I did not know why I was always sick. During a very especially busy time in my college career, I had watched my nephews who one of them had pink eye, and I contracted pink eye, and instead of having pink eye like a normal person, my pink eye turned into cellulitis. So the right side of my face completely swelled up and was infected. My eyes were infected and swollen shut. I could not see. And when I did see, I was having double vision. And so I was taken from my rural hospital to a larger hospital in Tucson by ambulance because they were worried it was spreading to my brain. So I was in the hospital for about a week or so. I racked up over $30,000 worth of hospital bills, and they basically just said it was a freak infection, and they had no idea why pink eye turned into cellulitis, and I almost lost my eye. So we will continue on with that. That was kind of the first sign. Well, not the first sign, but it was a very prominent sign that something wasn't right with my immune system, but I was still kind of cast off as just having a freak infection. I had then about a year of really chronic tonsillitis, so I had my tonsils removed because every month they would swell and get infected, and it was making my life miserable. So I had those removed, and shortly after that, I met my boyfriend. And actually, about 2 weeks before I had my tonsils removed, I met my boyfriend, and he asked me to be his girlfriend the day after my surgery. So that's cute. We moved in together. I moved to his town, and we moved in together. And after that, we moved to Colorado, and it was really enjoyable. And I felt like I had my life back a little bit. And then towards the end of our time in Colorado, I got sick again with really bad bronchitis, and I basically had to quit my job up there doing because I was working in a daycare, and I was around way too many children, and I got really sick, and the bronchitis didn't go away for a very, very long time. So and I kind of missed my opportunity to get a job that I wanted up there. Anyways, we moved back to our hometown, and shortly after we moved back, we found out we were having a baby, and my pregnancy was fairly normal. It was difficult. I was in a lot of pain most of my pregnancy, and they did the routine testing, and they realized my blood cells were low. My white blood cells were low, and they thought that was weird. But at the time, they thought it was because I was pregnant. So they just said, we'll keep an eye on you. My son was born a month preterm, and about 3 months after he was born, I came down with another weird infection. And I didn't want to go to the hospital. I had a brand new baby. I didn't want to go in, but my fever got really, really high, and I was hallucinating. So my boyfriend took me in, and I stayed in the emergency room that night, and just antibiotics and fever reducers, and they did some blood tests to see what was causing the infection. And they never did find the infection, but they did see that my white blood cells were really low, and they didn't like that. So they wanted to keep me in the hospital longer. They wanted to admit me, actually, because they wanted more doctors to look at me, but I refused because I had a 3-month-old and I wanted to go home. So they let me go home on the condition that I followed up with a general practitioner about my white blood cells. So about a week later, I went in, and I actually saw a nurse practitioner because it was really the only thing I could get in on that short notice. And she did, routine. She took my blood and they did a CBC, which is basically just checking your blood counts. And they ran a differential on that, which broke down the white blood cells and gave you the number of white blood cells in the blood. And, she talked to me, and I basically told her my whole life, I've been sick, and it's normal, and this is my normal. And so she called me back about 3 days later with the results of my blood tests and told me that the white blood cell, the neutrophils, were severely low. And she was referring me to an oncologist, and she was concerned that it was leukemia. So right away, that was alarming, and my boyfriend and I were terrified, and for quite a while we were on edge and thinking that this could be it for me. Like, this could be how I go. And we kind of, I was doing a lot of blood tests every 2 weeks. We did a bone marrow biopsy, and that ruled out leukemia. It came back negative, and everything looked good there. We ruled out all the autoimmune diseases. No, I don't have lupus. I don't have rheumatoid arthritis. No HIV. No AIDS. Everything that could possibly cause the neutrophil depletion was negative. So we came to the conclusion with him, my hematologist, oncologist there, that he couldn't do anything for me anymore, and he didn't know. And he basically told me that the reason my white blood cells were low was because I had had a baby. But I tried to explain to him that this was not the first time I've been sick, and that I've been sick my whole life, and that I've always had a hard time being healthy, and I've always been hospitalized, and I just thought that I had a curse or something. So I went and saw a new hematologist, and she was excited to take my case because she had never seen someone with my severity of neutropenia who wasn't going through chemo. So she did more testing, and I got a second bone marrow biopsy, and that was uncomfortable. That one was without any pain meds, so just local topical anesthetic, and that was not really helpful. And she ruled out a couple of genetic diseases, which I was really relieved to hear because I was worried about my son having the same thing that I have. And it was really going to determine whether or not we kept having children. So there's that. And then after about 6 months of testing with her and seeing her every once in a while, kind of just going over my blood tests and trying to figure out where to go from there, we came to the conclusion, she came to the conclusion it was chronic idiopathic neutropenia. But she is still apprehensive about that diagnosis because my bone marrow actually is hypercellular and is producing enough, actually an excess amount of neutrophils. They just aren't staying alive in the bloodstream. So they're dying rapidly, and she doesn't know why. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. My answer is very vague and kind of frustrating. 3 months after I had my diagnosis, so March of this year, I contracted a cold, which led me to have a sinus infection, of course. I went to urgent care to get antibiotics because I assumed that would help, but they prescribed me amoxicillin, which is something I have been taking since I was a child, and I don't think that that's really helpful anymore. So 3 days later, I again am in the hospital, and this time my appendix has nearly ruptured, and after 7 hours of absolutely ridiculous tests that they put me through and zero pain medication, they came to the conclusion that I was in need of an appendectomy because it was almost perforated, and that happened. So that was about 3 months ago. And so it's obviously still affecting my life. During the year of being tested and diagnosed, I was in the hospital 4 times, and I'm really hoping that I don't get sick in the near future, but I know that it's something that's always going to be a fear, and that is why I've kind of cut myself off from society. I kind of live like a hermit. I don't really hang out with people or have a job or like to go grocery shopping because people go to the store sick, and it's terrifying for me. And my son does not go to daycare or go to play groups, or he probably won't go to preschool because until I have this under control, my life as it is kind of comes to a standstill, and everything is focused on me just trying to stay healthy and not get sick and not go to the hospital again. So I'm going to try to make this video less in depth, just because I'm starting out saying hi and kind of introducing my condition and like trying to see if anybody else actually has it. So yeah, hi. There's that, and I won't go into too much detail about how frustrated I am, but I am, and I promise I won't cry yet, because basically my life has no purpose anymore. Just kidding. I have a beautiful son that I love, and I hope that one day I can go back to achieving my dreams. But until then, I just want people to know that there is this thing called neutropenia out there, and it affects a lot of people. And, well, it may not affect a lot of people, but when it does affect people, it's most likely kind of ignored or not known. And so if you have something that's similar to what I have, or you've experienced something like me, you know, just say something. And we need more people to know that there is this invisible disorder that really can affect somebody's life a lot, and it's affected my life so much, and it has really made a lot of things impossible for me, and it has threatened my life multiple times, and I am worried that one day there's going to be an infection that I can't get over, and it's scary. So no more talking. I'm going to sign off now and say goodbye, and hope that maybe someone out there can see this and say, hey, I kind of think I have something like that too, or I do have that and it gets better, or something. I don't know. I just need some information. I need more information than what I have now. So it's been fun. Bye.